For years, I've called for a more modern monarchy that reflects the world outside.
I don't think it's my behavior that's threatening its survival. You, as future king, have a duty.
People will never understand how it's really been for me. I never stood a chance.
All right. Here we go, guys. We got an old friend here on a Shot Talk. We got Adriano Goldman. We're going to talk about The Crown. Of course, I mean, Adriano's done so many things. I mean, I think I'm just going to look you up here on the old ShotDeck and see what we got of yours. I'm sure we're missing stuff, right? Like besides The Crown and Andor and stuff, we got Burnt, Osage County, Jane Eyre. We've talked about Jane Eyre. Jane Eyre is one of my favorite movies. We should revisit that at one point. But we're missing Sin Nombre. All right, we got some stuff we're going to put up on ShotDeck. But we've talked before about your work on The Crown. You've been there from the start. Here we are in season 5, and we're going to talk a little bit about 2 episodes that you did, episode 3 and episode 10. We'll focus on those 2. Welcome again, first and foremost. We love talking to you. As everyone knows, a massive fan of your work, massive fan of The Crown. Every single time I watch it, I'm sort of in awe of the craftsmanship. When you're approaching season 5, take me through those early stages of like, what are we doing the same? What are we maybe doing differently? I'm really kind of curious how, after years and years of working on something, what goes into those conversations?
Well, that's a very good question. And funnily enough, I hope this is not somehow frustrating in terms of the dynamics of it. Season 5 was a kind of a different one for me because usually for the first 4 seasons, even the seasons when I didn't do the first episodes, like season 2, for instance, I didn't do the first 3 episodes, but I did it on season 1 and then on seasons 3 and 4 as well. So that's a different sort of game you play because you have the super long prep where you try to, again, design or redesign the series. There's always a very clear desire from Peter that visually and rhythmically, let's say, editorially in a way, the show needs to progress. So I think, that kind of feels like a little bit obvious now after doing 6 seasons that we would never be able to shoot season 6 the same way we did seasons 1 and 2. I mean, seasons 1 and 2, they were in the 50s. So they were much more period-like, a little bit more, even with my strong, realistic, let's say, obsession and approach. It's always, especially if you go back to the first seasons now, it's a little bit more romantic. It's a little softer, even softer than, the following seasons. But for season 5, because I was doing another show, this is, right after the lockdown, the COVID lockdown, I got offered a Star Wars show and I did it for 1 year. And it got to a point when I was still doing that show that I felt that I was not going to be able to do season 5 whatsoever. The schedule for the Star Wars show was too long. It was really conflicting with me starting on The Crown. Oh, okay, that's frustrating. That's what I heard from the exec producers on The Crown. We absolutely want you back, etc. Guys, I'm not sure if I can commit anyway, but I really fought very hard to be able to, and kept in constant contact with the producers on The Crown, updating them in terms of my dates and etc. So I fought very hard to be able to rejoin the team, even for only 2 episodes. So basically that was what I could do on season 5. And I jumped like straight after finishing on Star Wars. I remember flying straight to Spain. So I was very tired by then, but I really wanted to do it. Another good reason was throughout the seasons, including Ben Caron on season 1, Jessica Hobbs on season 2, there was no newcomers on season 3, I think. And then season 4, I got Paul Whittington, meaning all the newcomers, all the new directors somehow the Peter Morgan and the producers, they drive or they schedule the show in a way that I could be somehow the keeper of the style and welcome new directors.
Right.
So you can offer your experience. Of course, you're not supposed to direct the director, but you can offer all your knowledge and your straight connection with the team. That of course facilitates for a director that doesn't know anybody. And I think it gives, usually, I hope so, it gives them comfort by knowing that, the team, not only the team, but the DOP is someone that has done the show before, etc. And on season 5, there was a new director, Alex Gabassi, joining us. He's also from Brazil, so I had met him before. We have done a few commercials, not too much together, like when we were still back in Brazil, and this was the first sort of drama for us to do together. So again and again, the Crown kept calling me saying, "You're just the ideal partner for Alex, so let's just make this work." And we did anyway. So I shot both Eps 3 and 10 are directed by Alex. And again, just repeating, those were the 2 episodes I did on season 5. So it's rejoining. I know it sounds like a cliche, but a family that I really, really enjoy, spending my time with and working with. Just as a detail, I took my gaffer from season 4 on The Crown. He did the Star Wars show with me, and then he came back with me to Crown season 5, and he did season 6 as well. So this is the same team that I've had since season 1. And although, of course, that gives you comfort, it doesn't necessarily put you on a comfort zone. I mean, there's a comfort by being welcomed back by people you know and you trust. But again, working with a new director, jumping on a moving train because the season is already in full flow. So you don't have enough, you don't have that same sort of prep time they usually have when you start on the season. So it was just a little bit more hectic and a little bit more pacey than I'd say, in terms of like trying to catch up. Because of course, when I jumped in, Alex was working for, I don't know, maybe 10 weeks already. So he was really keen to have his DOP to start, re-scouting, etc. So you feel a little bit behind. But again, because it's The Crown, you compensate with your knowledge, right? In terms of like, wow, okay, so let's see the locations. Let's not come with preconceived ideas, and let's hear first from the director. Anyway, so that was it for season 5. So it was kind of a unique one for me. And then season 6 just gave me the same opportunity again to start early on. I shot 4 episodes from season 6, just to so it varies. So
so in approaching these 2, and did you shoot these 2 episodes, 3 and 10, basically like back to back? Is that how you schedule it? Right.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, do you guys have like a formalized Bible for what it is, or is the show effectively the Bible? And conversations with Peter and the directors kind of have a feel this late in the game of like the stylistic approach to The Crown.
We don't have a Bible. I'd say we have it's not unique to The Crown, but we have a way of working. So I think that there's a way of approaching long dialogue scenes. There's a way of approaching sequences or scenes or days that you spend abroad. I mean, in terms of like the freedom that should give you to be able to jump out of that style, the well-known royal family style. So like, for instance, the pre-title sequence on season 3, on Ep 3, is just one of those feelings like you're watching like a spin-off, right? What is this? Is this really The Crown? So there's a way of working, and I'd say there's a few implicit rules in terms of like, you don't do close-ups, you don't shoot people from low angles or super high angles. It's some sort of like a eye height sort of choice for the lens. Slowly but constantly and firmly, we did less and less camera movements. I mean, there's a little bit. It's funny enough. We even like coming closer to the more contemporary period. Instead of going handheld, for instance,
right,
we actually made it a little simpler even than it was. Not simpler in terms of like, I think there's many more cuts on every episode of The Crown now that you could find on the first two seasons. If there was a Bible for seasons 1 and 2, was the less is more sort of Bible. We were coming in like, this is to 2015 when we were prepping. The feeling that we all discussed is that everything that was available, I mean, high-end productions on television, they were extremely cutty. So we felt like, well, maybe this is the time to bring something a little bit more filmic for the small screen. So let's be very precise and precious about camera movements. I mean, is there a reason for this? Or let's just be as simple as we can be and enhance emotions, give people time to actually listen to the dialogues and actually appreciate the performance, even learn a little bit of history as well, political history in the UK, etc. And I think throughout the seasons, we paced it up a little bit more. So I'd say season 4, you just feel a little bit different. And seasons 5 and 6 especially, feels a little bit more contemporary, more observational in a way. So there is an evolution, but there's also a really interest on keeping the style, keeping the muted colors, keeping the very slow camera movement that must be clearly motivated. I think another thing that has changed throughout the seasons is that there was one of the rules is what is a close-up on the crown. So this used to be a close-up on the crown.
Yeah.
Right? So you could still see the collar and the pearls and etc. So this is the queen. The queen is not just a head; she is a little bit of her shoulder and etc. And you can probably feel on seasons 5 and 6 even more. We got closer and closer to the main characters on longer lenses, not physically. So not bringing the 50 mil that we used to use on seasons 1 and 2, but lens up a little bit. This is since we got Olivia Colman on season 3, sorry, we started to move back a little bit and lens up a little bit more.
And so what are like these close-ups are from season 3, and they speak exactly that, like the curve of the shoulder.
So you meant Ep 3, not season 3, right? This
episode 3 of season 5. Yeah.
They're clearly now shot on 65s and 85 mils.
Right.
And with Claire Foy, for instance, the close-ups were shot on 40s and 50 mils, right? So there's a little bit of an evolution there, or progression in a way. The other thing is one very specific thing about season 4, when we understood that I was not going to be able to do the first 2 episodes with Jessica Hobbs. Funnily enough, the black and white, this is the very beginning of Ep 1 on season 5. And I shot the black and white sequence with Claire. Funnily enough.
Tell me a little bit about how you did it, because it's like any of the times that you guys, and this goes all the way back to season 1, how impressed I was with the coronation, and like where it just feels literally like you're replicating, these historical sort of movie footage. Tell me a little bit about this sequence.
Well, if you want to, again, for instance, if you go in order, Her Majesty in Scotland, that's archive, 100% archive. Right?
This archive too.
That's archive. Yeah, that is archive. And then that is not archive. So basically,
including all the extras,
they were there.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah. So this is what the art department did. I mean, they based. You see the how do you call the barriers? It's almost like a continuation to the other shot. So it's very accurate, and we are mimicking a scene that we saw on the archive footage. So it's very precisely that the way she steps out the car, the way she looks up. That's archive. When she looks up, archive. That's archive, and then that's not archive. But it's replicating exactly what we saw on the actual BBC.
Well, this shot's extraordinary. Talk to me about, in terms of the timing and the LUT work or whatever you had to do to really match. Obviously, you have the archive footage, so you have that as a match. But specifically, are you still shooting with similar lenses and doing a lot of it in post, or tell me the technique behind it a little bit?
It was done on the same lenses that we had, the main kit, let's say. So this is season 5. So this is now Cook S4s. So we use the same Cook S4s. I didn't really go back to try to emulate or actually get vintage lenses, because you can probably, I think it's risky to compromise or jeopardize the VFX work if you try too hard.
Understood.
So, and we had I mean, a lot of conversations about texture and grain addition to the footage. Even this, you see there's a little bit of a flare in the middle of the shot on the archive, and then we tried to get the same thing on Claire. But look, it's a very good result.
I mean, it's a great result. It's like, yeah. And also it's an interesting example of also the power of both. And this is what the Crown has always been incredibly effective at, which is these seamless VFX. Yeah. Combined with the on-set photography.
It's also the power of a very good VFX team and a good budget, right? And that transition is no. I'm just so happy, because it's a funny coincidence that I couldn't do the first 2 episodes, but the very first scene that opens the season, I was able to shoot. So it gives me, anyway, great pleasure. But so one of the things that had to be decided when everybody realized that I was not jumping in was that what then are we supposed to do with the lenses?
Sure.
Because by then, Ben Wilson, that had been my camera operator on seasons 2 and 3, had already shot episodes on season 4 and then 5. So he was then he got the first 2 episodes with Jessica because I wasn't available. So the conversations, like I think I told you this on previous chats that we had, that we always wanted, that was always part of the plan to change the lenses with the cast. So we had Cook Pancras for the first 2 seasons with Claire Foy. We had Zeiss Super Speeds for seasons 3 and 4 with Olivia Colman. And season 5, without me leading, was supposed to bring new lenses. So we started to exchange some phone calls and chats, etc. Me and Ben Wilson, because now he was starting the season, and he felt that the natural progression was to go to, Cook S4s. That was the choice. Let's not try the 5s or the 7s, or ultra primes were also discussed, but then, let's go a little bit sharper. We can still use the glimmer glass filters just to, whenever needed, to basically just bring back a little bit of that softness. We tried and we carried the smoke filters as well, that we use very rarely, but in locations where using smoke and haze or atmos are not allowed because they're listed buildings, or because the fire alarm cannot be switched off or whatever. So especially when you aiming to windows, something that we do frequently, you put the smoke filters and you kind of emulate that kind of a interesting haze effect on the highlights. So that was another thing. So we discussed the new set of lenses.
Had you used those smoke filters before? I've never used them. Did you find them fairly effective? Like I've heard of them, but I've just never used them myself.
Well, I'm quite confident. For instance, if you see, so there's the guy operating the camera, right? And then in the middle, you see Dodi holding a helmet. Yeah. And even the frame underneath. So those both sets, I did have haze on that day. Sure. But I'm just flagging that frames like these 2 that you aim into windows, if you had a smoke filter, I think you would like the
Is it a potential option? Like in most of The Crown, it feels like in a set like this, these interiors generally, and listen, I'm somebody who's a big fan of atmosphere. Are you generally just putting a low level base on your interiors? Yeah. Just to cut the light and to give a little bit of that
to lift the blacks a little bit, and also to, I mean, maybe a little bit less now on seasons 5 and 6, but also to, I think it helps to deliver a more period look as well. I mean, the Cook pancros are incredibly soft. I remember like having to stop using or stopping the haze machine, even on sets that I was allowed to use them, because with the Cook pancros, if you're not careful, it gets absolutely, it's just a combination of a super soft lens, the glimmer glass filters, plus atmosphere. It just can go a little bit too far. But yeah, so.
And you're still shooting the Sonys?
Sony Venice 1, right? That's,
still the 1. Oh yeah, because I guess the 2 wasn't really a thing. Well, let's do this. I want to put on, because this, we talked about in season 3, this opening of sort of, this meeting Mohamed Fayed sort of early in his days in Egypt. Sort of one of the things you talked about, the history, is it's so beautiful to learn the story of the Fayeds and Dodi and his father, and really what love he had for England and sort of reverence for the Queen and for the royals, and how he wanted to be accepted within that sort of society and be a success. Talk to me a little bit about, obviously you start in this episode on location. Where are you? This is in Spain?
That's in Spain. That's in Jerez. And if you go back to the establisher, of course, the background was completely changed by the VFX team.
Yeah.
So the ocean and some of the minarets were put there by the VFX team and CG. Again, this is Alex Gabas's conception. I think it's really interesting to present. Basically, it's an idea that from the very, very beginning of his life, I mean, he's playing with English soldiers in Egypt. So there's again an implicit message that he was always trying to be part of that culture, or like even by saying, I've got some English soldiers, they're my friends and we play ball together and etc. Look, those, they know him and he knows the guys. He's feeling quite free in this military base, let's say. So you see, the jeeps. I'm not sure it's very clear that he's actually playing football inside a military base, a British military base in Alexandria. And then there's a parallel story. So this is also happening more or less at the same period in his life. And then he gets to see the Duke of York, that was in Alexandria by the time. That sparks, that thing in him. I saw the king today. That's what he says when he comes back home. This is all to basically give you the roots of his ambition, right? Of his main goal in life, to become a rich man, to move to Europe and be considered a British or English gentleman, right? And then the story goes very much, following his life and career and his relationship with his son, and with money and with power and with his passion about, again, becoming a recognized British figure. He never actually got the citizenship. He died without getting the citizenship. So it's a very interesting and very unique story if you think,
And this, like you said, I really felt a bit of the longer lens vibe in this season, and even in the coverage. And you talked about the sort of height of the camera. One of the things, even in this shot earlier, And again, a lot of it can just be simply, bringing foreground into it. But I remember there was a time where very specifically I started really sort of adhering to at this distance, at this size, let's make sure we're always at 45 inches or something. Meaning I don't want, it's sometimes it's the parallax of the camera and all that, but do you have similar kind of framing rules to yourself, or just ways in which you communicate to the operators or set the look that where you go, oh, I like this camera at this height generally, like this is obviously below eye level and all that?
Well, I'd say I do. I don't think it's a conscious sort of thing. I'm not, although I haven't done enough on anamorphic lenses in my career, but there's some sort of this is 2-to-1 aspect ratio, but there's something about what I consider more rigid rules that you have to apply when you're shooting in anamorphic. So like the cowboy shots or the close-ups or whatever, I don't want to cut the hands off. I don't want to cut the feet off. So it's what I consider to be elegant, right? So for instance, all my operators, they know my issue about cutting feet. So if you want to cut the feet, just cut it. Just go up above the knees. Just don't chop the feet, because it just drives me completely mad. And it's funny how the anamorphic lenses, it's funny how, although it's difficult for composition, because the 239 gives you another third of a frame to think about in terms of composition, but in another way, it's more restrictive. And I don't mind that restriction. Do you know what I mean? So I try to apply those rules. So what is a close-up? Who deserves a big close-up? What's a cowboy shot? Don't cut the feet out, and try to keep the hands always when possible. So, I mean, it's just basic rules, but this is just, I think this is me more like a movie buff, watching stuff and thinking, well, that frame is not as good as the other one, or this or that, or like judge. But I'd say it's probably my taste, and then also the way I could, not only myself, with other DOPs and directors, etc., to get to a formula that is probably never discussed, but is always somehow, when you have to decide a size, for instance, so should I go a little bit tighter? Yeah, let's go tighter so we definitely cut the feet, right? Or let's go tighter so it's so we get to a close-up. So it's funny how we agree very easily in terms of what seems to be the best size for this profile shot and for the over shoulder shots. So
are you guys shooting these scenes, like the scene outside of by the gate, and just 2, 3? You have so many scenes in which now that you're a little longer lens, and let's say even the scene with the soccer at the beginning of this episode, how is the general vibe of the set in terms of cameras and multiple cameras and philosophy and shooting?
It's basically 2 cameras. I mean, even on that day was just 2 cameras. I mean, in terms of because it is a show shot on prime lenses, but in situations like this, I usually call for 2 zoom lenses. So we're playing, it's a soccer game. So let's give the camera operators and the editor a little bit more to work with. But even so, then the one conversation is, don't have the micro force, because I don't want to use this. So don't make it smooth. A variable prime sort of approach. So it is a zoom just to facilitate, but we're more interested on solid sizes.
Sure.
So, but it's much more easy when you're working with a large group of people, to be able to adjust the sizes. And also you're fighting against, the sun path, and you don't want to lose the backlight. So even like changing lenses can be really time consuming during a day like that. So eventually, depending on the nature of the scene, I would probably embrace a couple zooms, and if like, let's say, and then eventually, if the scene ends up on a dialogue that needs to be properly kind of covered, then I'll go back to the primes and do the dialogue on the primes. And I remember when I started on season 5, this is a question you asked earlier on, because Alex Gabassi, again, he was new to Peter in terms of like, you know, the way he works, the way he conceives his sequences. So we had a long read through with myself, Alex, and Peter. And without actually giving us a recipe, he said, just the show needs to evolve. This is like the late 90s now. Something needs to be a little bit more contemporary, etc. So we carried on. I like mentioning Michael Mann, for instance, and his use of long lenses. And so I said, how can we actually translate Michael Mann into a show like The Crown? But like, again, by lensing up a little bit, by I don't know, by the tracking shots. Sometimes they're good storytellers, but they can be a little romantic. And also I realized from seasons 4, I'd say, and then even more on season 5, that because it's a very high-end show, but it's still TV in a way. So you produce a lot of fat per episode. And then you watch an assembly, and this is something I'm trying to really learn, and how to digest and how to cope with this, even for feature shows, features and future shows. That you design a crane shot that does have a beginning and an end, and that end it's supposed to take you somewhere else, or a tracking shot that has a clear end and a purpose. And I don't know why it's cut. It's just shortened. So everything. But this is not just the camera traveling. It's the camera traveling somewhere. It's actually there is an end point for the shot. This is not just a commercial where I keep the camera moving because I like it, because it's 30 seconds and it's better than the shots. You know, there's a little bit of a choreography or a dance in every single shot. So I'm really trying to now get more in touch with the editors as well and say, did you really watch the take all the way until the end? There is a purpose for that shot. So, and then honestly, because of that, because you realize Peter plays so much in the cut. I mean, that's his game very much. I mean, he writes and he edits his episodes with the director and the editors. So he can, he's less obsessed about camera movements or camera styles. It's about pace. It's about, cutting quicker to the next scene. So we basically realized on seasons 5 and 6 that if there's not a clear reason for a movement that can survive, we should probably not do it. That facilitates the cuts, and you don't get frustrated somehow by designing something that is not used in its entirety. Do you know what I mean?
Of course. But I wonder, it's funny that you say that. I'm just watching this. One of the beautiful things in episode 3 is his relationship with Sydney's valet, who was the excommunicated king, the king who gave up his throne.
Yeah.
He takes Sydney into his home, and even after his sort of racist beginnings of wanting him to, leave the Ritz, and it becomes one of his closest confidants and friends, and is really the person who teaches him what he needs to know for his desires to be, British and to be accepted. But it's interesting. You talk about the real restrained style of The Crown, and you talked about commercials and moving the camera, unmotivated, motivated, that kind of stuff. It's so restrained and so specific that do you ever get nervous? Like we got to wake this thing up a little bit. When you see the finished product, you're like, great, this all works really well. But when you're on set, do you ever just go what are we gotta just shake this up a little and put a little style into this?
We definitely do. And I think Alex is a guy that really appreciates improving and making his shots more sophisticated And he, because I think because of the language and because we get along really well, I was openly asking questions. I mean, I love this tracking from the the bottles to finding Sydney on the bed. Can we really use it like this one, this pen? That can we find the flare and then find Mohamed there? I mean, do we actually have this time? Yes, we do, because it's such a sad moment that we can slow it down a little bit. And also, something I have to say about what Peter does and Alex, they clearly decided to humanize Mohamed Al Fayed, right? Because it was there. It's easy to imagine a version where he's just a bad guy, just a villain, right? That doesn't like his son. He's absolutely obsessed about social ascension and climbing, and everything is about money. Everything is about being recognized. But because of who Salim Dal is, the actor, and because of who Alex is, they managed to humanize him in such a way that, like, you get disappointed when you know that he's racist, but you little by little you think like, whoa, but he's able to change. He's a character that can change, and this is something I absolutely love in what fiction or history rewritten in a way, is that you can add character, you can add a soul to a character that it's not necessarily true. I mean, I've never met Mohamed, but he was a very controversial businessman. I mean, very, very rude sometimes, we heard. He bullied his son for years and years, and then etc. So I love that as well on The Crown. That is uplifting. You fall in love with characters, and that's another interesting is it's not basic good and bad. We're supposed to hate this guy, or even Charles' story throughout the seasons. Well, is he a weak character that we should feel pity for? No, not really, because he eventually comes with incredible strong dialogues. And I mean, Dominic West and his performances, and Josh O'Connor, you're just like, oh, okay, do I like this guy? Or so the contradictions are so well explored. It's not as simple as having the villain and the hero.
No, and it's one of the things I find so enjoyable about The Crown is, and particularly in this season, is to learn the backstory of some of these characters that I barely knew. I knew of Dodi Fayed, obviously, because of his short relationship with Diana, and I knew Harrods, and I knew Mohamed Al Fayed, but you really spend so much time understanding the motivations. And what you said about Prince Charles is, it's funny watching him finally get the throne this year. There's something about, and this is obviously one of the most interesting things about doing The Crown, I'm sure, is you're delving into one of a family that's probably the most famous family on earth, right? And I remember feeling like, oh, he's such a sad character. Why would you even want the crown at this point? You're so old. But when you watch season 5, particularly the episodes like Decommissioned and the episodes that you did, oh my God, I actually wanted him to, I actually got it. It's like, I totally understood that man who now suddenly is being, given the crown, and why it was so important. And also, he did come across when I was younger feeling like a bit of a sad, kind of boring dude. And here you go, no, he's actually pretty smart. Episode 10, when he's actually has a point of view about where Britain should go, and he has a point of view about where it should go. Let's jump ahead to 10 for a second, and talk to me just even this. I don't know if this is second unit. I don't know if this is like fake. You tell me a little bit about the magic behind this.
Well, all these, let's say, ground floor shots or street level shots are for real. I mean, we just had a narrow road somewhere in the UK, in London, that the art department brought, the neons and etc. So we had a bus. That the foreground is CG, and the neons above the first floor are CG as well.
So you guys went to Hong Kong?
That's an actual street in central London. This brick wall you see here in foreground is real, but not the neon. And then everything else you see, it's practical. That's all practical, but it's just a set built, or basically a set built on an actual road. This was done on stage with all the reflections. That is actually London. It's a London landscape turned into a skyline, modified to become Hong Kong. Again, that's on the back lot against green screen. That's one of our sets inside the Britannia. That's a set. You mean the chat he has with Tony Blair Blair. Yeah.
Well, no, just in terms of showing the empowerment of this person, and that he's not just this sort of forgotten, son who's like, halfway between Queen Elizabeth and
One other thing about and it's funny that usually comes more from the directors than the designer or the DOPs. Some sequences, they choose to be absolutely accurate historically. So when Charles was in Hong Kong for that ceremony on that night, it was raining.
Oh, I wondered that. Oh, that's interesting.
So it's historical accuracy, right? I sometimes argue against it, not because of the rain in this case, but like, well, guys, but we're there. The uniforms are there. We have the Chinese cast. We have this. We have can we just get a little bit of freedom? No. So, for instance, the opening, the black and white sequence that we saw,
yes,
that's absolutely accurate. This one with Charles in Hong Kong is historically accurate. So that is an interesting one. You see the boat, the ship ramp. That's another one. Interesting. So the only thing real here, well, the brick building, the car, and the ramp.
But by the way, that I feel like whenever I think of the Crown and its like incredible VFX and the ability to sort of replicate so many different types of locations and environments. Now, whenever I see anything, because I think I've seen behind the shots of like a ramp and then a huge 747 that's not real, is now every shot that I see, I'm like, is this even real? Like even this, of course, I go, well, that's a perfect example. But wait, you're saying the right hand side is a CG, and including here as well.
Yeah,
this VFX team's amazing.
It is.
Obviously, it goes hand in hand with the photography and all the rest of the craftsmanship, the design and the wardrobe and everything. But it really allows the show to feel like it's never compromised. Like I actually forget that, like, oh, well, I just assumed you went to Malibu for all those shots. I assume you did this and that. Like even the shot of Dodie is introducing Kelly to the 747, this shot here, where I'm like going, is any of this real? Like, but I see
that's all real. That's all real. Not the palm trees though.
So wait, is this also still in England, just on a tarmac?
That's in Spain. That's in Spain.
Yeah, there you go.
So I remember now that the third sequence that Alex was obsessed about accuracy was the Chariots of Fire sequence.
Well, that I wanted to talk about. That I have a little video for, because I remember Chariots of Fire. In a weird way, Chariots of Fire to me was one of those early films when I was a kid where I thought, oh, this is like movies as art. Because before that, it's like Rocky and, Star Wars. And I just was a young kid who just thought, well, that's movies. And there was something so artful about Chariots of Fire, even as a young child. And these shots, I remember thinking, God, you guys really just nailed it.
Yeah.
So tell me,
it's funny because, like I was saying, I usually resist a little bit of copying or mimicking something to the very 100% precision. But then you see this. So Alex tells me, look, yes, there's going to be a couple shots that are going to be exactly like the movie. But then there's the after the cut beats where they check their feet, they seem to be tired, etc. This, behind the scene, we found a picture from the actual day and stories behind the scene. So basically they were planning to shoot that same shot the day before. They couldn't finish the day. They came back the next morning. They couldn't use the crane because it was too windy on the actual movie, the actual Chariots of Fire shooting day. So they had to improvise some sort of a ramp to be able to start high and finish low.
This is like, because there's a because I went, what would you ever set up like a dolly track going down?
No,
where did this come from?
It comes from a black and white picture. And it's exactly like that. And also, we managed the guy that you see operating the camera on the dolly. It was the focus puller on the actual shooting day of Chariots of Fire. So he came and he confirmed. I mean, of course, probably, in terms of engineering, I think it probably was a little bit different. But we knew they had two dollies like counterbalancing themselves and etc. So it was... The other thing I want to flag in terms of working with different directors, I was just grading this morning for season 6, is how what dark means for different directors, right? I mean, should we leave her face a little bit more? Do we see her well enough? And then I do know my directors, and I do know directors that would say, well, yeah. So the other ones say, no, because we've seen her so many times in this episode. She's got so many close-ups. So let's do something a little bit different. Let's go darker. So because this just came up for me when you showed me the Queen inside the Britannia.
Yes.
Checking individual rooms and how dark they are. And because that's Alex. Alex likes that. He likes the low-key situations and use really well the human figure against the background, and it just gives me a really great joy, because I think this is another way to progress with the show, make the look evolve, so it's less perfect, less romantic, less wrapped around, and then eventually some sequences are going to be just this. It's just a lady walking, and saying goodbye to her, beautiful boat, and the other one just buying a new one, right?
Exactly.
And Mohamed in the parallel story is just buying his. So it's a different kind of royalty, isn't it? It's one is historical, and the other one is just it's the power of money and also some sort of a political power. But look, he's like a new king. Coming to his...
Well, you're right. Those parallels of even Prince Charles having to fly in business class while the
Prince
flies in first class, and his son is introducing his girlfriend to this new G4 he just bought, right? So
exactly,
the old money and the new money. It's the new king, on the block. Yeah, those parallels are beautiful. I was thinking. So the scene I wanted to ask you about, because you were talking about the directors, where he likes to sort of set the value of the darkest stuff and be bold with those kind of things. And these scenes that you guys do all the time in Crown, and I always thought it was like, you guys should have the Crown shear number 5, like the shears that are in the treatments of the windows are so consistent. And I know I've fought with this all the time, and I'm curious how you guys do it, because this incredibly natural light of the windows doing the work. And then I'm seeing coverage in which obviously now the windows are front lighting these people and edge lighting her. And then, on some later things, these now what's the value of the people that have the back to their windows versus the front light, that kind of thing. But the windows are in control, meaning they're not blown out. They're not Janusz Kaminski 5 stops over, they're contained, and they're at a value which feels like that's what your eye would see. but yet the work is still, it still feels like they're doing the work to light the scene. Talk to me a little bit about how you're able to execute it.
Well, I mean, to be honest, I've done it so many times. And of course, what I mean is you realize, okay, now who's going to be backlit and who's going to be front lit? So that's because it kind of scares me still today, those scenes. So we have to, this is one of the main discussions when we go for the tech scouts and even the first scouts. Okay, it's a large group of people. Some of them are going to be sitting, she's going to be standing. So can I, for instance, this is me trying to shift the queen a little bit more to the side. So not every single shot on her, she's against a blown out window. So let's just shift her a little bit to the side. I used to have more concerns, not specifically about having a super bright background, but like when you cut to someone heavily backlit, to someone heavily, even softly, but heavily front lit, I used to struggle with the cuts more than anything else. I mean, I know it's believable. I know it's real because she is backlit and the other person is front lit. But then when you cut them together, especially if you're over shoulders, you have one shoulder that is bright, you have the other one that is dark, I always felt that even knowing that is in perfect continuity, when you cut them together, somehow it feels like there's a broken sort of continuity. So you try to, clock them a little bit. So there's a little bit of a side light for the queen when possible. The other thing we have done is usually, I think in that situation for the party, it's probably just one soft sun outside.
Yeah.
Just one, but a little bit far away. So there is a little bit of a push in, but kind of spread and even and etc. And there's a few tricks we also play. I mean, if there's something that it feels to me that if I have to, let's say, stop up and blow out a window completely, and I don't see another solution, and if the camera doesn't move much, what we do is we shoot the scene as it should, and then I just get a plate of that same window. I stop down 3 stops, get a plate, and this is something we do on the DI. We don't even need to do it on, it's not a VFX. It doesn't turn into a VFX shot. It's more like cut and paste on the grading days, and my colorist is an absolute genius, so he does it. So and to be honest, the fact is the HDR really helps. It really has helped a lot in terms of like being able to keep the highlights under some sort of control. Because the thing is, for my taste, personal taste, unless there is a source or there is a practical that I can believe somehow it's there playing some sort of a key light role, I really struggle with proper fuel light. I struggle with bringing lights to create a fuel light.
Yeah,
I can leave with the bounce. I love bounce boards, but I really struggle with technical fuel light, because the thing is, if I'm happy with one reflection in the eye that comes from the window that is my key light, why am I seeing now another source? Because I'm completely obsessed about reading eyes and reading my sources on the eyes, right? Okay, that's my window. Oh, that's this. Oh, that's that. So I remember once, this is season 4, isn't it? When Mountbatten dies.
Yeah.
And Josh O'Connor comes back home. Prince Philip is drunkish. And they have that conversation right in front of the fireplace. One of the most beautiful dialogue scenes that I think we've done. I still don't forgive myself for actually having an Astera tube. You see?
Yeah, the Astera.
So you see one dot, and then you see the fire of the white, and then you see a line.
That little thing there.
No, it's the line. It's actually the
line.
The
Astera tube that you see there. No,
you have no idea. I actually called the VFX team myself, asking them if they could take it out. and nobody sees it, but that's my kind of obsession about eyes. So anyway, I love the scene, and I still love it. But it's funny how the eyes really drive my way of lighting in a way, you know.
You know what my version of that is makeup. It's like, because, you know, I'm always saying, can you make it matter, more matte, less reflective? But modern makeup, particularly to make people glow, and it's like what generally makeup artists will lean towards, is actually a little wetter. Yeah. And I'm always like, I can't stand seeing some reflective thing that feels like the light reflected in their face. And so that's my obsession of like, I feel like I'm feeling the lighting on their face right now. I see it in other people's movies, you know, and I'm like, oh, it's great. It's like, again, you just have these little mental things that, like you said, the thing with the Astera in the eye, that becomes your kind of, you know, the thing that you really get sort of hung up on. What's the story? Again, you guys are so effective that now every time I see anything, I think, well, did you go there or did you not go there? Like, did you guys go to Malibu and spend some time? Is this also in Spain?
It's also in Spain, and that the horizon, you see, the ocean, that's VFX, but it's the only thing. I mean, that was the landscape. That's a drone shot, and I think we checked on the Google Maps, and we thought, well, maybe if we look that way down the valley, we can put, you know, the Pacific there, and it works. It really is very much like a Malibu house, isn't it? Yeah.
You know, this is interesting. That there's two things you guys do in episode 3. You do it when Annabelle Wallace is dying, and she's has the end of her sort of life, and she's having a you know, she's in a bit of a state of insanity, I guess, and where you have this really sort of active camera and expressionistic sort of thing going on.
And again, I must be super fair with Alex, because the Wally Simpson's final moments, they were on the script, and they were not on the script anymore. And Alex fought really hard to put that back in, because it was moving, and it was a little bit more abstract, a little less Crown in a way, you know?
Yeah.
It's just like a bad dream of someone. And I think it's so beautiful that, you know, that he managed to actually put it back in. And she's an amazing actress. And it was really moving, actually, too.
And then the other place was in episode 10 with Diana and her voting on the monarchy thing, which is a detail. It reminded me a little of the episode when she's roller skating, or where it's like when you're alone with Diana, it's like the rules change a little bit, where suddenly you feel this sense of like, you know, I'm not sure it is handheld, but it almost feels the camera has its own activity, and it's able to sort of be a little looser, like with her personality.
And this is really I mean, it's a really kind of, it looks really beautiful, this first sequence. All the positions she finds, and, you know, the close-ups are so.
Yeah, it's a great piece of lighting here.
The camera really loves the Bicky. I mean, it's such beautiful features. And
talk to me in terms of just the relationship you have with the actors, because you've seen them all grow, and what's funny is I think even with Dominic West, or I think of her taking on such a figure in Diana, and even obviously now the 3 queens, Claire and you know, Olivia Colman and now Imelda Staunton. Like when they start the seasons, like you have such a relationship because you're a constant in this, along with Peter and the directors. I mean, what is it? Do you feel the nerves? Do you feel them trying to sort of discover their version of who Diana is over the course of episodes, and finding it later? Do you guys ever have to go back and go, well, I actually now really understand who this person is. By the way, I'm gonna, you know, it's hard when you have to play it over an entire season, 10 hours of filmmaking.
Well, especially shooting out of order. I mean, for them, it's not really easy. I think the Bicky felt much, much better on season 6. There is a specific moment when we were finishing block 2, the 3 episodes around whatever her last days, just recently, she made sure that she said openly, I want to just now, before we wrap, I want to just, can you please call the crew? And she made this speech saying actors always feel very vulnerable. They feel, of course, very observed and judged. There's a lot of preparation. There's a lot of scrutiny on what they do and the professionalism, the way they deliver or not deliver, or whatever. And she felt, and she said, I just wanted to say this to all of you together, because it's the first time in my career that I felt protected. I feel protected when I step into your set, she said, and not to me, to everybody. You're just this absolutely focused, kind, quiet, gentle crew, and this makes a lot of difference for all of us. Also, she had to face herself a little bit of this paparazzi presence. I mean, when we went to Barcelona and Paris and etc., it's the Crown in Paris, and there's paparazzis every night. She didn't feel really great about it, and she felt that the crew was there for her. I mean, it was a clear kind of an army trying to point where the paparazzis were before she came in, and trying to keep her in the car when possible. And this is something I get really engaged to, because I hear the first ADs and the PAs talking about it all the time. And you feel her tension increasing, because she's very much aware. If the first AD is not happy, if he's tense, so it's also part of my kind of duty in a way, or role, because I work so close to the actors to make sure that I don't add more tension to the set or to the actual whatever circumstances she is or he is or whatever. So it really creates a very strong bond.
Oh, that's great. I one of the last things I wanted to ask you about is, and some of them are always these specifics. So I think about like when you approach a season or you approach the episodes specifically, when you go, this is the one that me and my team are going to have to focus a little more energy on. What were some of those in these episodes? I just kept thinking, even though it's not super complex, I just think like you guys jump into a scene in a ballet, and on the screen time that it ends up there, it's very thrown away. It's always about the actors and their relationship and him seeing Diana and then inviting her to dinner. And that's where, again, we have that little intermediate thing where you really see the power of the paparazzi between that as she leaves the ballet to go to dinner, and how much it really affects her life. But I kept thinking, wow, you got to put on a whole ballet too. Like if this was a stage and a ballet, there'd be lighting directors working on this for weeks and months.
Again, I must say kudos to Alex Gabassi, the director, because he preps thoroughly. I mean, he always comes with a proper idea. I'd say the biggest challenge, because I had done Claire more or less on that same kind of position. I mean, actually, she was on the opposite side, the side that you see Mohamed now. I did it on season 2, if I remember well. But funnily enough, even on a show like The Crown, the biggest challenge that day, we shot everything you see on screen in half a day.
That's my point. I suspected it's like this amount of time, and yet you have to make it feel fully formed in a way that I don't see a tiny bit of compromise in any of it.
Yeah, we didn't even have time on that day to do crowd rep. So because there's always an intention to be behind the ballerina and then see the crowd.
Yeah.
Eventually, even as an opening shot, so you see it's full house. And then you find Diana, and then you find Dodi, and then you start the story. I mean, we didn't have the time. So that day, I think we had 3 cameras on that day. So the A camera focused on the characters, Mohamed on one side and Diana on the other one. And there was we actually also managed to keep shooting everything at the same time. So I was shooting her close up, and there was a camera shooting the ballet, because there was no time actually to do them 100% separately. So I think it's a very, very good result. I love the staircase scene right after. And I must say, the dinner scene, just very simple again, like we keep saying, is one of my favorite Crown scenes. That one.
I love this shot here.
It's just because I think that's filmic. It's just like it's sophisticated, it's simple, it's not overlit. You don't need to kind of pushing light onto people's face. You've been with those characters. She doesn't want to face the window. I find it very low in the best way, the best sense of the expression. I think it's very beautifully low lit. And again, you need the director's support. I mean, actually, Alex, that's probably his favorite scene as well, because it's subtle, low lit. There's no arrogance whatsoever of anyone, the actors, the performances. Everybody seems to be on the same sort of this soft, gentle environment, and I think it's really lovely. It's so intrusive what they do, but they still manage to have this civilized conversation, and it's a very special one. That one.
Yeah, it's a lovely scene. Well, and like you said, it's the humanization of Mohamed, because even though he's a climber and even though he has ambition to be wealthy and accepted and in the society, I genuinely believe he cared deeply about Diana. It makes what we know is happens even more sad, particularly, of course, because it also involves his son. Yeah, and it's like, because so many of the things in The Crown we know, it's like knowing the ending of a movie as you watch it. It's even more sort of heartbreaking, and even also sort of like, wait, I don't understand. This guy was with this woman that he proposes to. Doesn't he meet Diana like very soon, and in Central or whatever it is, and you're like, how does this all happen so quickly? And it made me do that thing, which the show is great, which is like you start to Wikipedia things. You're like, that he really produced Chariots of Fire, like little things like that I had forgotten about.
He was really engaged to Kelly Fisher.
Yeah, all of it.
Yeah, all of that. It's really true.
Yeah, no, of course you guys have such adherence to the real thing, but it's what makes the show so fun. Even though I'm sure we'll have a chance to sort of revisit the entire Crown. You just finished it, and so just in short, is there any sort of like postpartum? Is there something where it's like, or is it just still too soon to think, oh, I can't believe I'm at the end of this journey that's lasted many, many years for you now?
Well, of course, I feel a little nostalgic, and also the accolades and all this attention and recognition and the awards, and it literally changed my life and my career. I moved to the UK. My family's here with me now, so it's not an exaggeration to say it changed my life. It really did. It really did. For 1 second, when I felt that I was not going to be able to come back for season 5, again, as I said in the beginning, I was doing another show. I felt, well, if I don't come back now, this is probably the end. I'm not probably, then I should move on and maybe even stick to the show I'm doing now. And if I don't go back to The Crown, but because I managed to come back, and when I was doing season 5, it just felt that I should finish. I should keep myself available and finish the show. So I did on season 6, I did the whole thing again. I started from the very beginning. Also, it's this, for me, the beautiful story about, the project I did with Stephen Dodry in Rio in 2013, the connection we created, the fact that he brought me over to the UK to do this, the Brazilian DOP that had never done, period before. And the support, the endorsement, the energy, the confidence, and etc. The fact that I think I fulfilled the expectations and I'm still here. The fact that I did the first 2 episodes, the very first 2 with Dodry, and now the very last with him as well, 610. So this full circle for me and him, the fact that I want to carry on working with him and, continue to be his partner, as very much so is the case with Ben Karen, another director I met on The Crown that is now one of my best friends, one of the most talented directors that I ever worked with, and Alex Gabassi. It's just like, there's so many stories to remember. But in a way, I think it's okay that is over now, I think, especially because I finished with Dodri. So it feels like that was the end. That was really the end. And I think we're happy to move on. My relationship with Peter Morgan is the best possible. And I'm really curious about his next project. I don't really know. But something big is coming in 24, probably. And I hope to, be one of his collaborators again. So, it's just, there's no downside on this journey on The Crown, Larry. There's none, no downside.
Yeah. Well, it'll stand the test of time because it's really as good as just filmmaking can get. Don't even relegate it to television or anything like that. It's great. And if you haven't seen season 5, watch it. But if you haven't seen the show, it's a great top to bottom, start at season 1 and work your way.
And also, if I give you 5 episodes to watch throughout the seasons, you can watch them separately. And you're going to love them. Yeah, you're going to love them.
Oh, I think about that. I think about the one with the avalanche of like, the one in Scotland, and then, where they're like historical episodes, the coronation,
The one I love, one of the ones I love the most is 209 is called Pater Familias, is the one that there's a parallel story between Charles going to school and Philip going to school in Germany, whatever he went. So it's Dodri again. There's so many I love. Fairy Tale. It's
of course. Yeah. No, it's fantastic. And of course, your work and everyone else on the show and the season is just exceptional. And I'm excited, I guess, in the winter this year is season 6, I guess, right? Like it's this year. It's like we don't have to wait a whole another year. Great.
Oh no, it's coming soon, coming strong.
There we go. Oh, good. We get it all in 1 year. Well, great. Listen, always a pleasure talking to you.
I'm always available for you, Larry.
We'll do it. Get yourself represented well as all.
Thank you so much once again.